Okay. And let me share my screen. So, all right, so has everyone seen my screen?
Yes,
Yes,
I can see you.
okay. So we want to welcome everyone to Environmental Fridays. It is personal. This is season 7 of Environmental Fridays. At the bottom right, you have a QR code that could take you to our website. We also do have a Facebook group that you can join. And it's very easy. You could go to Google, just Google Environmental Fridays Facebook group, and all of the first hits would be ways to get in to that group. We also do have a presence on YouTube. This is the YouTube playlist. Same thing, you could just go to Google and do Environmental Fridays YouTube, and the playlist will pop up. We have several playlists. The one that I have the link to here is this season. So all of our episodes are on YouTube, and the QR code will get you to this season's playlist. So we have a change in our schedule today. And we previously were going to hear from Earl in Trinidad about permaculture, but something came up on his end and he can't make it, so we'll have to reschedule him. But my dear friend, Stacey, is a trooper, and she was ready to go. She was ready to go on very short notice. So you'll be hearing from her here pretty soon. Next week, Friday, will be our last Environmental Fridays for this semester, for this year. And we will be hearing from Stephanie, who just recently has moved into a new job position, Zoo Miami. So we'll hear from her as our last speaker for season 7. So today's speaker, I can't recall how long we've known each other now. It's about 2 to 3 years or so.
About 3 years, yeah.
Yeah.
About 3, 4 years, yeah.
Yeah, and she actually is a return guest speaker, because I believe she did again maybe about 2 years ago. She did a presentation. And my recollection, funny enough, is that she was also stepping in because somebody bailed on us. So
We have to be more intentional about this,
I
Desmond. We have to, yeah,
know.
let's change that for the new year.
I know. I know. So as you could see from this slide, she is very much involved in the environment, an environmental activist. She's co-founder and vice president for Climate Rights and Justice International. And she completed her studies in Nordic literature. I need to talk to you about that.
Yeah. My journey is definitely not linear. I
Yeah.
actually make that point in my presentation.
Yeah. And she did that degree at the University of Odense in Denmark, then came back to Barbados. She is originally, you were born in St. Vincent, correct?
I'm from St. Vincent of the Grenadines. Yes, I'm Indigenous
Yes,
Garifuna.
that's where my sister was born too.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, yes. Before returning to Barbados, there she did undergraduate degree in literature at the University of West Indies Cave Hill campus. She then completed an undergraduate degree in law, also at Cave Hill.
Yes.
At
Yeah,
Cave
also
Hill.
at Cape Town.
And then right now she's completing a master's degree in island studies at the University of Malta. She's completed climate leadership training, and is jointly certified in law, climate law and governance by the University of Cambridge, the Center for International Sustainable Development Law, Strathclyde Center for Environmental Law. So she has a lot of
That's a lot,
background, and she's been doing a lot. And that's just a little bit of what Stacey's background is. And so it's an honor, privilege, and great to have you here again to talk to us about creating communities today that last into the future.
Yes.
So at this,
Thank you.
I will stop sharing and you
Okay.
could go ahead and share.
Okay, thank you so much, Desmond. It is great to be here. And as I said, we have to do this in a way that's more intentional because I
Yes.
really always enjoy our sessions that we do. So let me just go ahead and present my screen here. Present. So you guys should be seeing. Let me know if you can see my screen, full screen.
And we see, okay, there you go, full
You
screen.
can see it? Okay, great.
Yes.
Super. Great. So you've already introduced me, so I'll just move ahead and talk about, okay, what is my overview? What's the overview for our session today? So we'll do welcome and introductions because I always love welcoming people. And I know we've introduced me a bit, I know everyone knows Desmond, but we could chat to each other a bit in the chat. And then I'll cover the concept of community. And then also talk about community and sustainability. How do we forge a solid foundation? And then linking to creating community, I have a program called the Climate Rights Defenders, and I'm going to be piloting an offshoot of that program, a book club. So it's like a subscription book club, and there are benefits involved in that. And that's a way to create community and to do what I call democratize education and learning. And then we'll have a general discussion and a Q&A, and I really hope to see lots of questions, and I want everything to be very active. So moving on to the next slide. Okay, so I want to welcome you from wherever you're joining from. I mean, I'm right now based in Barbados, so it's right now about 11:15 in the morning. I don't know where everyone is joining from, but please, people who know me and Desmond will know, I love interactive sessions. I love hearing your thoughts and perspectives while I'm presenting. Don't ever think you're interrupting. Please pop something in the chat. Right now, please use the chat, say hello, let us know where you're joining from and kind of a little bit of what your background is at your leisure. You don't have to do it all right now, but also use the chat because I'll keep monitoring the chat. If you have a thought while I'm speaking and you want to share it and you don't want to unmute, I'll be happy to share things, but I think the whole point of these sessions is that we're coming together to discuss things in a way that we wouldn't always get the chance to. And we're interacting with people from all backgrounds and all walks of life, which is what to me is the core of community and the core of progress and prosperity. So yes, please let me know where you're joining from. Please feel free to use the chat. So a little bit about me. This picture of me, this was taken at COP28 in Dubai last year, and I am an educational consultant. Desmond mentioned that I'm an activist, and I was driven to co-found with a very good friend and colleague of mine, Climate Rights and Justice International, because we could see in the space there was a lack of, we think, adequate representation that was intergenerational, and there's a lot of exploitation in the NGO space. But that's a topic for a whole other session, Desmond. But I thought, you know what, I'm not just going to talk the talk, I'm going to walk the walk. So we formed Climate Rights and Justice International. As Desmond mentioned, I studied Nordic literature in Denmark. I returned to Barbados and did my other degrees. Now I'm doing my master's in island studies at the University of Malta, and I'm specializing in indigenous climate adaptation methodology and the dearth of data when it comes to indigenous people, particularly in the Caribbean. So as I mentioned a bit at the beginning, my journey is not linear. And that's the best aspect of a journey, right? Never think that you have to take one step in front of the other in a way that makes logical sense. At the time I was doing these things, I just knew that I had a particular calling that I wanted to fulfill. And I mean, I don't want to say how old I am, but the word sustainability didn't exist and the sustainable development goals were not a thing when I was going to university. So it's funny how suddenly things have evolved and I'm finding my path. So I want to encourage you all in that respect too, just remember that things make sense once you follow your life purpose. And that's what happened to me, even after doing degrees in law, which I think has a potential for change. But in Barbados, it's an area that is to me very fossilized and very it's not inclusive. And I knew that's not something that really met with my values that I wanted to. So even as a little girl, I was always into Greenpeace and Amnesty International back in the day. I hate to again age myself when there was no internet. I wrote letters to world leaders about environmental issues and human rights issues. So I knew that when I could come across training opportunities, and you can see here on the slide some of the things that I did. And for me, intersectionality is always important when it comes to whatever I do. So I look at the intersections to human rights and the environment, for example, the whole idea of climate justice. And this has by far been like the most fulfilling thing that I've done. And even in all of this, what I really love doing are sessions like this. I really love the chance to talk to people who are, whatever your lived experience is, I find it valid to a conversation. And that's why, my focus is on community, because the concept of community can be very downplayed and can get lost in the shuffle of what it is to create meaningful change. So I just want to say that. So I want to hear from you what you think about community. I'm going to take a look in the chat right now. So I see, thanks for those of people who put messages in the chat. Thank you, Richard. Oh my goodness, it's 13 degrees Fahrenheit in Michigan. Oh gosh, Richard. I won't say what the temperature is in Barbados right now. Suffice to say it's quite sunny. But thank you for joining. And I think it's great that your education, that's exactly what we want to talk about, right? Education today. And okay, and we also have April Kennedy. Thank you. You are joining us from, this is Georgia Department of Public Health, Childhood. Wow, that's a lot of important things. And you're also a PhD. Yeah, that's incredible. And please, yes, put your contact information in the chat, and I'll put my LinkedIn information as well. I see Linda from Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah, recent Hurricane Helene. Oh my goodness. Yes, climate change is really hitting us hard in that respect. And thank you for being a concerned citizen. That's all we need. We need concerned citizens. So thank you, and of course, Desmond, you're here as well. So so before I delve in, the concept of community, that's the next thing that we're looking at. I really want to hear from you, and what do you think of when you hear the word community? How does the concept make you feel? What are some examples of communities? And I said there are no right or wrong answers. This is really just for us to discuss. So great, thanks for jumping in. And Laurel, you're saying that one of your first jobs was a research scientist for Greenpeace. That's awesome. Oh, you didn't hang off bridges. That was why I wanted to join Greenpeace, all that incredible stuff they did. And I freaked my parents out when I said I wanted to, quote unquote, run away from home and go on the Rainbow Warrior. They had that ship, and I love the name of that ship. But yeah, I didn't.
But if you hang banners, you have to wear a diaper. So, so I decided that was not happening.
Yes. Okay, great. So yeah, so you're my hero then. that you did that, you're a real activist on the ground. And really it's funny, before the eras of what I call digital activism, you had to show up physically in a space to make a difference, right? And that in and of itself is an aspect of community. When you show up physically somewhere and you're together with people who have a shared cause, shared vision, shared passion, and want to create change in a way that's meaningful and in a way that will actually have a lasting impact. So that was great. That actually led me into talking more about community. Any other ideas? Please feel free. And Desmond, it's okay for people to unmute if they want to, and just
Oh yes.
chat.
Yeah,
Okay, great. Because I can't see the screen at the moment. But if anyone, Richard, I'm sure you'll let me know. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm having a problem defining community.
Yeah, okay.
Because is it just a bunch of people in the same location? Is it people with a purpose?
That's a very good point.
I don't know.
Yeah. So you see, it can definitely be both, right? So there can be virtual communities because technology has allowed us to expand the concept of what a community is. And right now, virtually, we can create communities based on not physical location, but on shared ideas and shared goals or visions, right? And I see, Richard, you've mentioned it's relationships between living things and the places that they gather, whether you're human or more than human, non-human, exactly. So community can refer to a physical space, the people that are in that space, the living things in that space. Okay, so I think that's really important too. And I just wanted to also acknowledge, Terry, that you work on plants and animals are affected by climate change. Yes. And you were at IPC. That's amazing. So we have to hear more about those experiences, Terry. And great, Gloria, you're saying a community is any group you identify with. So you can see again, branching out that concept of self-identity and sometimes even self-awareness, and community can also lead to a sense of people feeling a sense of affirmation, right? And a sense of direction as well. Okay, so that's cool. So we're gonna go to the next slide. And you'll see that, okay, so community, for me, there are lots of words that come up when I think about community. And I think some of the things we covered before delve into those. So the idea of collaboration, that you're helping each other or sharing. You're forging partnerships. This talk is about communities that last into the future. We want communities to be ones that are built on partnership. So it's not so much about individual progress at the expense of everyone else. It's about when you benefit, everyone else can benefit as well. And part of that, of course, is personal and professional networks, right? Because at the end of the day, we are part of a certain society, a certain way of living, that we have jobs, or if we're lucky, we can live our passions and live our vocations. So, but even within that, it can get very isolating when you don't have a way to meet up with people, as it were, with the same goals. And then enhancing connections. So when you do those things, here we're talking, if we connect on LinkedIn physically, when we connect and meet up, you enhance connections. You really build something that's, I would say, more organic than just networking. And networking is important if it's not too transactional. And that's where I think community stands separate from networking. So I think community also means there has to be safety and respect within that community for it to really be beneficial. You have to know that you will be respected. You can have divergent views, but those views will be respected. But those divergent views cannot place other members of a community in harm's way. So communities love to protect one another. You should feel safe in a community. And I see I have collective learning there twice on purpose, because I'm going to come back to that. All of that will lead to learning in a way that's informal and collective and not based on competition. That kind of learning to me fosters more innovation and resilience. And I come back to collective learning again, because that's something that I want to look at as we move on to the next section of the slide. So anyone else want to comment or say anything before I look at community and sustainability? Feel free to unmute or put something in the chat, because I'm going to make sure I keep an eye on that. Okay, if not, then I'll keep thinking about the final point I mentioned on the previous slide, when I said community and sustainability, forging a solid foundation. So I think that when we look at collective learning, that's the most potential to achieve sustainability through building a sense of community. And what does sustainability mean to you? That's another word that, just has come to the forefront in the past, 25 years or so. You think we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. And for me, I know that being someone who has an indigenous heritage, I know that concept of sustainability has been practiced as a way of life for millennia. We coined that word and put it on the concept, but it's been practiced in communities for generations. This idea that you want to use resources in a way that will not deplete them for future generations or for other people. And you also want to make sure that you don't necessarily take or use more than you need. And I think that sustainability, there's also a regenerative aspect of it, that you plant the seeds for there to be more in the future. And I think that's really important. So, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Yes, would you like to say
So
something? Please
Stacey, I
interrupt.
think
Yeah.
that's a really, really, really important point about sustainability, that it's been around for a long time, and that most native, if you want to use that word, civilizations, subscribe to that and taught that. So for example, the Iroquois, I believe, in the US,
Mm.
the concept called the seventh generation principle.
Oh, that's lovely.
Right. So that whatever we do today should have a positive impact for 7 generations into the future. So it's really important to recognize that while sustainability is a quote unquote new word that we bandy around, that it is a concept that lots of past civilizations have lived by.
Yeah, very much so. And I really love you mentioned that 7 generations concept. That's exactly it. That you want to make sure that you are creating more for the future generations. And then, the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 of them. I have them on a poster behind me, zero hunger, no poverty, gender equality, climate activism, life on land, life below water. It speaks to a connection with the landscape and with nature that, again, for millennia, many people felt and practiced, and we didn't see ourselves as separate necessarily from the natural world. So I think collective learning is going to help us to create a more sustainable community and create a more sustainable future for everyone. And that learning does not have to be formal. There are lots of ways we can achieve that kind of learning. So when we think about community building, I like to think, as I said, the connections between people who have common interests. We talked about interests, but also challenges. Challenges are a good way to build community, not to focus on the negative, but to see the challenges as opportunities and see how if somewhere else might have a similar channels and they found a solution, you haven't found that solution. How, when you share knowledge, can you create solutions to the challenges, okay? And that's, of course, you exchange knowledge, you exchange resources, because the point is to, again, build community, achieve the shared goals that you have. If you look at the challenges as ways to create opportunities, to share goals, that's one of the most important ways you can foster a community-led approach to sustainability education, because I believe that in as much as I did all those courses and I'm doing my master's at the moment, there's lots of other ways that, for me, if someone in my family, my son learns about sustainability through, being part of my book club or being in my courses, he will talk to my mom about it. He'll talk to his friends about it. They'll join. And that is learning that is just as valid as what happens in a more formal educational space. And that's something I think we need to recognize, because I'm from an island, so I always bring an island perspective to things. And I know that the common challenges that are shared on islands, the issues are often enhanced or exacerbated by the isolation that can be felt. So within islands, we try to create communities, but also across the seas, we try to combine with other islands. And I think being in a united community and doing what I call democratizing the education process, in other words, making knowledge accessible to as many people as possible, and making knowledge about sustainability accessible to as many people as possible, and also recognizing there are many ways to learn about sustainability. I'm choosing to do it through having a book club. And I'd love to, if anyone wants to put anything in the chat or talk about what their experience with learning has been. I think that's very important because, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for,
Hello.
I'm really enjoying this.
Cool.
I was thinking every day is a learning day. You learn something new every day. So, and just be open to other people's thoughts, other people's cultures and everything, because you learn new things every day. And that's what I love about being in a community, not just my community, but other communities as well, because you get to learn from different people, because you never know what somebody else is going through. You could be I learned with myself. I could be talking to somebody else and I could be ministering to them and they're ministering to me at the same time. And that's the way, and that's what I look at. And not only could the community just be within your own community, but it's also like a mission field. So when you got out on a mission field, you have your different your army, you got your church, you got the
Yes.
community, you have this everything is mission work basically. And so I look at it as we are to be a blessing to each other and one another and just to help each other. That's what it's all about. And I am
Oh,
complete.
oh, I love that. I love that, to be on a mission and to be a blessing to one another. And that really ties into when I think about learning and education should be a blessing. And so often we have negative connotations of the process of learning because it's put and it's inculcated the sense of shame or embarrassment, or if you don't know something, that's wrong, or the competition based model of education, which coming from an island in the Caribbean was often linked to colonialism and colonial experiences used to separate people, and even the idea of giving grades, I very much
Hmm.
disagree with, but that's another story, right? So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm an educator myself, so I understand where you're coming from, and I always think of no answer is not a right answer, and you got to look at things differently and from a different perspective instead of just stuck on our own perspective and to open up our minds to other things. Even because I work with preschool babies, and they have me
Oh,
cracking up
so
and
sweet.
laughing all the time with the stuff they
Yes.
do. So
Yeah.
for example, we had our Christmas program, and one of the kids was like, "Up on the housetop, reindeer floss," and I was like, "That." I said, "Baby,
Ooh,
it's pause." But
yeah,
but if you look at it, she was rhyming at the same time, and she didn't even know that.
exactly.
So you just gotta
Exactly.
look at. Yeah, I find something funny within everything every day, and sometimes you can just make stories out of stuff. So I just have been enjoying the experience of things.
That's wonderful. And I love you bring up the idea of storytelling because that's an important way to create interest in what's happening. If everything is just to do with facts and figures, but you don't hear about people's lived experience, I think that's a shame. So that needs to be brought into the collective learning experience as well, for sure.
Yeah, because one of our kids was just talking, and we found out, which was sad. We were just having a general conversation, and she said, "I sleep with my mommy and all my brothers and sisters because I don't have a bed." So now I'm like, now I know
Mm,
what she needs. We can get her a
yes.
bed for Christmas because she needs a bed. So you just never
Yeah,
know what the kids are going through at home either.
exactly.
That
Exactly.
causes the effect of how they're reacting within the classrooms and everything.
Exactly. And I think, that idea of it being exchange, that it's not just it's a learning exchange, it's a knowledge exchange. I learn so much from learners and they learn from me. And I also wanted to acknowledge in the chat, I see Dr. Bridget Hines, who's also joined us, and I think that's awesome. A former UNDP staffer, wow, at the UN headquarters. I visited UN headquarters when I was in New York earlier this year, and it was one of my dream places to be. So thanks to all of you for joining and for your comments. Keep them coming. And Bridget, you have your hands raised. Please go ahead.
I do. I'm sorry to join late. I'm in the
It's
classroom.
fine. Please go ahead.
I am just wondering if any thought, consideration, as you see in my chat, I wanted to air my platform is really for persons with special education
Mhm,
needs.
mhm,
And the percentage is the incidence of special education needs, autism, especially ADHD,
yeah.
is on the rise, whether
Mhm,
for surveillance reporting improvement in how we report data or for whatever reason. And
mhm,
I'm just wondering if, from your posture, whether in the future, at least, there could be any consideration for that. My platform, CSC, as I posted, we
mhm,
train globally, and we train from the position of universities. So
mhm.
I'm registered and endorsed. The program is endorsed by Andrews University. You can
Yay.
find it on their website. And currently, we're in the Caribbean, at
Oh,
Caribbean
awesome.
Union, University of the Southern Caribbean. I attended back
Great.
in the day when it was CUC, so I want to say that. And we have a power packed 6 module, 6 month program So that if you're
Fantastic.
a busy professional, if you are a lawyer, an advocate, a policymaker at any level, you can attend. And the first module is always international, regional, and national STEM, special education needs law. We deal with the law
Brilliant.
first. We let folk know their rights and the
Yes.
current policies. Then we go into the 14 categories because what we do is we have pejorative names culturally for persons who are
Yes.
on the spectrum. They're
Yes.
dunce or
Yes.
stupidity. I don't know where you're
Yeah,
from. We
it's
have
something
names for
else.
them.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah,
they're left in the back rooms of our homes.
yeah,
They
yeah.
don't attend church. They don't go to the parks because
So they
people are
don't have
disturbed by
community.
their presence.
Exactly.
Correctly. And our buildings are not accessible for persons. They're not conducive. The lighting is not good. The noise, the hum of certain noises, etc., etc. And there is not that consideration of that sector of our community. They're all part of our society. I'm just hoping that you can voice that at your level. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for raising that point. And I think even methods of learning and methods of teaching have to be more inclusive. I really believe very much, because I was an educator at one point as well. I mean, I still am, but I was in the formal school system. And I really try to make everything as experiential as possible in terms of experiential learning, in terms of field trips, in terms of peer-to-peer knowledge exchange, because I think that just made a lot more sense. And it was very interesting that early in my teaching career, I was kind of branded as a bit of a maverick and a bit of a, an outlier. And I remember the administration of the school I taught at gave me all of the most difficult classes, like the classes who they said most likely people would end up in prison or would end up, homeless or something like that. And I luckily for me, well, not luckily, I didn't know any of this. I just approached every class. Okay, this is a cool class. What can they learn? To me as a student, you always start as a learner. You start at 100% with me. Like I don't say, oh, you're at zero, and let me see how can you earn these points. No, you start at 150%, and then as I interact with you, we see how we're melding that. So maybe you become 100. And I found that like the students I had, like they were recognizable. Like I come back to the staff room and people are like, oh my gosh, how did it go your class? And I'd be like, oh, it went really well. Like it was fantastic. And the other teachers would be shocked. But for me, that's the way the problem is not learners. A lot of the time it's the environment and the context in which you're forced to learn or regurgitate something, as opposed to have a creative approach to everything. I think Einstein had that quote, if you judge a fish by its ability, everyone's a genius. If you judge a fish by its ability to fly, it'll live its whole life thinking it's stupid. So you just have to have some different parameters, right, of learning. So I think that's really important. Inclusivity in learning and inclusivity in how teaching is offered, I think would make a huge difference across the board and will build better communities. Can definitely help with community building. Yes, thanks for please put anything in the chat that you'd like to. And
Yes, that's just as I see you for justice. The
yeah,
Convention
yes,
on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities,
yes, yes,
CRPD.
exactly,
So,
exactly.
and we're currently doing research into the rising incidents. So, is it environmental? And
That's
that's the
true. We
only
have to
reason why.
wonder.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
And also, I
Thank you
mean,
so much.
even you're welcome. And the rights of the child. One of the first things I did with my son, I talked to him about the Universal Declaration of the Rights of the Child. He had a poster of it up in his room. We have to be aware, and that's another way to build community, is to be aware of your rights as community members, as members of the community. That's hugely important. So, oops, I skipped back a bit too far there. So we are looking at community building, and now again, the idea of learning. So I think I mentioned it briefly, the idea of an intergenerational approach. We talked about learning. So to me, collective learning and building community and informal learning, when you share and you preserve and accumulate that knowledge across generations, that's that collective aspect of it. And I think often we separate, children from adults or young people from old people, and we think, oh, and I don't think that should happen. I think that we can find solutions a lot better when we recognize that we have so much to learn from each other. The elders in our community have so much to offer. And one of the things I'm looking to do with my NGO is actually to create a system of grant funding and help for NGOs and any associations led by quote unquote older people, because right now there is this huge rush to fund that 18 to 35-year-old bracket. And I'm way past 35. I wouldn't even go so far to say I'm past that, right? So there's a lot of what I'm doing, I self-fund or I work on, and I want to help other people because there's when you're older and wiser, you can lend so much mentorship to people in those younger spaces. And I don't think right now there's equity in terms of the access to funding from an intergenerational point of view. And when individuals and people from different generations contribute knowledge and skills to a group, that's what has the positive effect on the knowledge of the entire group, not the group, belong to one particular bracket, whether it's age, whether it's, a certain demographic. There has to be a mixing. And then when you engage within that setting, you exchange ideas and you expand concepts. So that's how innovation grows, right? And that sense of pride that we have in each other, we'll have pride in our learning and create those positive connotations around learning that I think are really, really important and also help to preserve traditional knowledge. Again, at a grassroots community level, that's how we can preserve community knowledge. It shouldn't an ancestral knowledge and indigenous knowledge and traditional knowledge. It shouldn't be a researcher coming in who's going to decide to document everything from a lens, because again, even the whole, the science of anthropology is also steeped in certain racist and colonial tropes as it is. I think that's really important for us to remember when we look at community building and we look at the things that we can do and share. So how I wanted to create a community is that I'm creating a book club, and I'll put the link to sign up for it in the chat. So I want us to look at a particular designated book. It's going to focus on a topic relevant to sustainability, and obviously do different books throughout the months that I have the chorus and I have the book club. But it's going to be a sense of community. Some of the benefits are you'll explore ideas in a safe space. It'll be virtual. Access to knowledge. There's a level of mentorship that I want to offer as well, and expertise in the field of sustainability, because you can see my lived experience as well as the the formal certifications that I have. And I want to make this accessible to more people, and also collaborative learning. I keep talking about it, but it makes such a difference to learn collaboratively. So those are the things I want to do, and I want this book club to be an aspect of democratizing education, so that you can learn concepts through what's in the books that we're going to look at. Most of the time, there'll be nonfiction books, and for example, there's a book called Fresh Banana Leaves, which talks about indigenous knowledge and how it has really enhanced the space of sustainability. And I also will talk to people and let people nominate some of the books that they'd like to discuss, for example. And that's a way that we can really learn a lot from each other. And I'll be giving in-depth analysis of the content and providing the course materials and learning support. There's networking involved in there as well. And I also want to give people who take part and who participate in a way that's meaningful the chance I could create a professional reference for you. Also, people who are in the book club will have a chance to boost their confidence through learning and practicing presentation skills. So it would be great for you to present some aspect of the book that you find interesting. And I want to offer some certification as well when we're all done. So I think I've talked a lot. So I want to say thanks to everybody. Your ideas and enthusiasm drive positive change. I always say that, and I say that, and I mean it. I'm someone who is very enthusiastic, and I just thought I was being normal until people would tell me, "Gosh, you're really enthusiastic." But I don't know how else to be, and that's how I think we can drive positive change. So we're open now to general discussion, question, thoughts, feedback. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see people better. And if anyone has any questions, please, the floor is yours.
So yeah,
Go ahead, sir.
So I wanted to talk about what's happening in the Caribbean as far as you know. So to bring other people up to speed on this, there is a community in the Caribbean, to use the language you're talking about, called CARICOM. It's like 20 different countries together. I can't remember how old it is. It's probably like 30, 40 years old.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with whether CARICOM has a infrastructure and personnel focused on environment? Because there's
They,
small island nations is another, yeah.
yeah, they do, but the issue I always say with CARICOM is implementation of the goals and the plans.
Okay.
And I think that there isn't enough of a focus, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, on things that will actually make a difference on the ground for the people living it. And even though we're very, very aware of what climate change is, we know what's happening, there's a lot of red tape to effect change in this part of the world. So if you try to go through government or ministerial level, I know people who've tried to include climate change in the curriculum in Barbados and started, what, 4 years ago? And it still isn't formally included. However, if you decide, again, community-based, if I were to go to a teacher or school or principal and say, there's a program, do you have an environmental club that you could lead or I could help with, which is what I've done, that's a way that you can start effecting change on the ground. So I think that there is an awareness in CARICOM, but right now, the things that need to take place for there to be meaningful input, for example, collection of data, which is not happening enough at this level, I don't think things will be effectively implemented, to be honest. So it's, the change has to start here. It has to be, as people say, the bottom-up approach.
I know some CARICOM countries, Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, actually have ministries that are focused on the environment. But like you said, not sure if that focus is being implemented.
In some ways it is. In some ways it is. For example, I know in Barbados, we have a Ministry of the Environment and Natural Beautification, and they actually join forces with a private entity, and the Commonwealth Secretariat gave a grant for there to be an awareness about a national action plan against plastic pollution, for example.
Okay.
So what happens, I find, when really effective action happens, when there is a combination, that public-private partnership, as we say. It's governmental linked with the private sector, which can bring the expertise and the funding and cut through some of the red tape. That's the way things happen, I think, through again, collaboration.
Okay. Iman, I think you had a question. You could unmute.
I got it answered. I was trying to find out the information about the book club. Somebody put it in the chat.
Yeah,
and then I was gonna mention the it's a book. I was just on Clubhouse. I love connecting with Clubhouse. It's like a networking group, and you get to meet
it's a community.
all types of different.
It's a community.
Yeah. But I do the champions. What is the champions? Breakfast Champions Club, and they mention a book. And let me see if I got the book on here.
Yeah,
and it's
please
talking
share.
about what we talked about today. With the culture thing. I'm trying to see what book that was.
But that's great. Please,
well, I
when you
know
can,
one
find
day.
it.
Let me see. One is called "It's the Culture for Me."
Okay.
And it's by L.E. Johnson.
Okay. I'm writing that down.
Let me see if I can send it. I'm still learning how to do this stuff.
It's okay.
It's L.E. Johnson, second EDD. It's right on Amazon. You can order it.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the other one, it's a culture book. I thought, let me see if I can find it, because it was.
And
I got to get this book.
While you're looking for that, I see Richard you put in the chat. Yes, Dr. Johnson, she's like my hero. She's positing a more positive approach as opposed to this doom and gloom ideas that we have when it comes to the environment and the climate crisis. What if we realize that we can figure it out and we take it from there? So I really love her work, and I think all of those things, those questions: what needs doing, what are you good at, and what brings you joy? If you can bring those things together to create positive momentum. And again, it's funny, that wasn't my initial intention when I set out on my very non-linear journey, but it's turned out that way, and I'm very glad. Because,
So are you aware of environmental type literature, meaning essays, poetry,
Yeah.
articles that come primarily from small island nations.
So more artistic type so more, I guess, examples of, you say, art and literature as opposed to scientific or as opposed
Yeah.
to nonfiction. I mean, some of our poets, I mean, already in St. Lucia, the poet laureate Derek Walcott, who won the Nobel Prize, some of his literature, his poems, oh my goodness, amazing evocations of the Caribbean landscape and the sea. I mean, you have the Barbadian poet Edward Kamal Brathwaite, who does amazing, again, should be more well known internationally. But yes, reading those things, reading those poems and those words, it's a strong evocation of the landscape and the environment and or place therein, in that we're not separate from it. And I love that you mentioned that, because the arts and anything creative and anything that is, I think, participatory in nature can really create an awareness of what's happening in the environment and climate, as opposed to just science. And to me, science is in and of itself incredibly creative. It's an incredible journey to start to investigate and ask questions, not with the idea that you already know the answer, but you're on the journey of discovering it. So yeah, I think those are some examples I know.
Those are some of the sources that might be part of your book club.
Yeah. For example, some of it's going to be, we will look at fiction and nonfiction. And I do want members of the book club to nominate books. I mean, in this first, I have a group that I was working with, and I did a poll in a WhatsApp group, and we were looking at different books and who votes for what. And I can tell we'll end up reading several books simultaneously because there's such an enthusiasm for it. And even that, sometimes too, getting through a book, not everyone necessarily likes reading. I mean, I'm a complete, reading nerd, but some people don't. And a book club like this is a great way, I think, to talk about the book, use an audiobook, talk about the book, however way that you can interact with those words, that they forge a sense of purpose within you. And then we discuss that. That's great. That's fine. So yeah.
You have a regular schedule for when you guys meet virtually?
I'm gonna start it. We used to meet on Tuesday evenings at about 5 at my time, which would be 4 in the afternoon your time. But again, I'll be putting in a poll because I was meeting once a week. But for this book club, I can tell I'll have to meet about at least twice a week because of what we want to do and what I want to get through. But there will be a specific time that we'll meet. Right now on the form that I've put in the chat, I'm collecting the information from people so that I can reach back out and say, well, let me know if this works, and just get a sense of what is a time that most people can. And also there'll be access to recordings, obviously, of any meetings that we have. So yeah.
Yeah, it would be really nice to have a bibliography that people could contribute to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That focuses on different levels of learning.
A shared document, yeah. I could create a shared Google document.
Right. So that some of the books would be, I know there is one lady, Katrina in Trinidad, that writes these books about a mermaid, and she uses the mermaid to teach environmental ideas.
Awareness, there you go. Exactly.
So, yeah, if we could create that sort of bibliography and stuff,
then I think that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, it could span from, elementary level all the way up.
Yes, that's very true, because I want this to be intergenerational, and I want some of my favorite books that I read as a child, I return to as an adult. And I see so many lessons that are still really poignant. And I think, as you said, people who are writing books, for example, the book club is a great way for them to talk about their work and, get their work, let their work reach a wider audience. So yeah, I'm definitely for that. That's on my list, to-do list for next year.
I'll reach out to her and let her know.
Please do.
For sure.
Any other comments, please, or questions? I would love to hear.
Okay.
I'm guessing not, but this was amazing.
Yes.
It was so fantastic. What I'll do before you all go, I'm gonna put my LinkedIn in the chat, and please feel free to connect. Because again, I talk about connection and collaboration. So I mean it. I won't let your connection just like languish there on LinkedIn.
I
Please do that.
also noticed your organization has a link on the United Nations.
Yeah, because
Are
I
you doing
presented.
work with them, or?
I do work with them informally. I actually contributed to a document about they refer to as small island states, but I call us big ocean states. And it was a
Yeah.
document to do with inclusivity. So yeah, I've done some work with them, and I just shared my LinkedIn. Oh, and thanks. I see Irma has in the chat the culture code and the talent code and the culture playbook. Yes. Yeah, that's really awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Good.
So yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Dr.
so
Murray,
much.
I'm sorry, I came in at the last minute, but everything I've heard is why it is so important for Environmental Fridays. And I cannot wait to get the recorded copy of this because even her mindset and her way of thinking is so what we need today. And how she's able to take something like the environment and some of the other things I heard and branch out to other areas that many of us don't think of, even a book club. I mean, as an editor or publisher of a newspaper, it means so much to hear this. And so this Environmental Friday series is so essential. And it's a great thing that he puts this on YouTube and he sends it out to others who may not be able to make the 9:30 a.m. Every Friday. But I think this is going to be a really big hit to so many, from educators to everyday people and others who's really into making the environment personal. So thank you to this awesome guest and host, and to you, Dr. Murray, for Environmental Fridays.
Thank you. So that kind of triggers the idea that we could possibly, Stacey, we could use the collaborate with the Benton Spirit. That's Princella is the publisher.
I
From
would love
time to
that.
time, yeah, from time
I
to
am all open to collaboration, trust me.
Okay.
It's to me it enriches life. And again, that's another kind of legacy of a colonial mindset, this idea that we have to be separate. No, when we collaborate, there's more for everyone.
Absolutely. So we do have from time to time an environmental page in the newspaper. So that's another way you could probably
Yeah, we have our list. Remember, that's one of our New Year's resolutions: intentional collaboration.
Yes.
That's one. So yes.
All right.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much to everyone. This is wonderful. I really appreciate it, and please do keep in touch with me. Yeah, I'd love to hear from everyone.
Okay, if there are no more questions or comments, we want to thank our guest speaker today, Stacey Alvarez de la Campa, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, I know, right?
For being with us and for filling in at a moment's notice. Was a very interesting presentation that is sort of like outside the box, thinking about.
There is no box. There is no box.
There you go. There is no box. It's only the box that we put around ourselves.
There we go.
You're right. So thanks again, Stacey, and thanks to everyone who participated. Thanks to everyone who joined us today. Our last Environmental Fridays for this year is coming up next week. That will be December 20th. So hopefully you all will join us then. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Pleasure being on here.
Great to see you. Bye.
Very good presentation.